So online with me, I got Dan Lowe, and he called me up this morning on a video that I put out. Anyway, that video was one that I'd completely forgot about. It was a phone call that I'd got a long time ago, and it talked about how these guys in the Uintas found these petrified giants, petrified aliens.
Hey, last night I met a guy that showed me some pictures that just dumbfounded me.
Really?
Yeah, Terry, I've never seen anything like it.
And I was supposed to contact him, and I never did. And I'm sure the person gave me the phone numbers to talk to him. But man, I work out of the country or out of the state a lot. I'm not home a lot, and somehow it's one of them things that slipped through the cracks, and so I never did anything good. And Dan, you called me today. You wanted to know about it, and that's what I just told you just now. That's what I know about it, which is not nothing. But you had something that maybe had to go along with that. So tell me your story of possibly this could tie together with that video I put out yesterday.
Well, I was tempted to click on that link and listen to it. And it just seems awfully familiar about something someone told me quite some time ago. I don't remember who it was that told me. We were driving down the road and he pointed over and he said that there was a farmer and he was putting in a fence between his property and the Indians' property. And they broke in.
This is in the Uinta Mountains, in the Utah Uinta Mountains. Okay, sorry.
This is down at the base of the mountains. And he broke into what he called a vault. And he didn't let anyone else go in. He went in, he looked at things, he came back out, said, I got to get this thing covered up. He called in a concrete company. Someone come in, formed it all up for him. They poured some walls, put in a steel door, locked it up, and it's supposedly sitting like that to this day. The only hint as to what he saw in there was that there were some very strange things inside the cavern. So when I heard that story, I thought this could be one and the same. That story was originally published, but lacking all kinds of information. It was first published in George Thompson's book. Daryl Sprecher found the story for me today. I think it's page 67 or page 76 in Faded Footprints. But it doesn't really give you any information. It just gives you a general area as to where this may have happened. So I have my ideas as to who it was that told me about it, but I'm not going to mention him on this. So the last thing he needs is people calling him.
Well, and I guess I'll go ahead and say it. I don't know that there's any harm in saying it. The only reason I even released that recording, that phone recording, was because the person who called me has passed away now.
Yeah, he's been gone for, I don't know, a few months, but
half a year, I guess, probably half a year.
Probably.
So people was saying, well, where's, because he says on there that he posted some pictures on his Facebook page, but not the pictures. They wouldn't let him post the pictures of the things that he wanted me to check out. So I don't know what pictures he was, but the person who did this, and I guess I can tell that the website, but you'd have to go back to the date in the video, because I has the date in the video when the call was, and you'd have to go back in there, and then you'd have to scroll through a lot of years, 4 or 5 years, to try and get to, but the pictures that he's talking about, they wouldn't let him post them, so he never posted them, just some pictures, and I don't know what them pictures are. And the guy posted thousands and thousands of pictures, so you'd have to go through a lot of pictures.
Yes, a lot of those pictures, some of those pictures were mine.
Some of them pictures was mine. He collected a lot of pictures, and he posted them. He reposted them. And so what was the name? What's the name of his Facebook page? Snake Dancer.
Are you going to come right out and tell everybody who it was?
Well, I guess there's no reason not to. I don't know. What do you think?
Uh,
I mean, there's nothing.
so I'm just saying, be a little bit cautious. He was a hell of a nice guy. You can't say any less than that about him.
And
But
and when he talked to me, he'd just spent a few nights before talking to these other people, and he was baffled, and he wanted me to check it out. So,
yeah,
and I'm sure he gave me the numbers and stuffs for me to call him and check him out, but I didn't. It slipped through the cracks. I didn't even remember that phone call until I just accidentally stumbled onto it on my computer.
well,
So
I put in a call to a friend of mine who is pretty familiar with things that have happened in that general area, and this happened back in 1993, and I, based on what he said, I think it's one and the same incident.
ah.
I I don't recall anything being said about petrified giants, aliens, that kind of thing.
Well, I know in that same area, I know a guy that their family, this kid that I know, his grandfather had a ranch out in that area, and they fell in. They broke into. They well, it wasn't digging or anything. They fell into the roof collapse. They fell into a cavern, but it was like an Indian cavern or something like that. And his grandpa, was friends with the Indians, and so he wouldn't let anybody else go into it. He covered it back up, hid it back up, and forbid anybody. So I just assumed it was like an Indian burial or something like that, that they broke into. But that was the same area, not broke into, but fell into. So
Well, just to add to this video, if you're interested, I prepared a few short stories for you.
I'm always interested. Let's hear. But first, man, for people that don't know who you are, Dan Lowe, man, is one heck of a great researcher. Has the a blog Toscoro on Toscoro.com, and where you dive into all kinds of great things. And like I said, you're one heck of a researcher and got a lot of great stories and a lot of great information. And go check out Toscoro.com to see some of that great information. Now, Dan, give us a great story.
Now, these short stories are stories that were shared with me by an individual who has also passed on. And I was under oath to keep these things to myself. If I could expand upon them, get in touch with the people involved and do something with it, I was more than welcome to do it. But at this time, we have my friend who's getting sicker and sicker by the year, and he just keeps sending me stories, sending me things that he just hasn't had time to do anything with. And even to this day, when I open up his files, I'll be going through it and come across something and think, what the hell is this? And so I pulled a couple of these out, and they are short. For whatever reason, I never wrote them down, probably because the majority of it was already written down, or it was such a short story, it wasn't a big deal. But I want to tell you this one here. And the reason I'm going to tell this one is because I would love to find the guy that was involved in this. His name is Pat Rollstone. Now, I have been, as you know, I do a little bit of genealogy, and I can't find a Pat Rollstone. In fact, I think I found the last name in one case, but I'd love to find out who this guy was. But he sent my friend a letter, and he said, the reason I'm writing to you is to tell you a story my grandfather told to me, and he died in 1948. He, along with two other friends who happened to be Teos Indians, went hunting deer in the mountains above Blanding, Utah. That would probably be Blue Mountain. They had hunted all day, seeing only a few deer and none that they could get a good shot at. Grandfather knew the area pretty well, having hunted there most of his life, even though he was born and raised in Arizona, like he liked hunting in Utah. Incidentally, this is the longer of the short stories. The day wore on. Soon the sun began to sink low in the western sky. Grandfather and his friends, I wish I'd have gone through. I could cut a lot of this out to shorten it.
That's all right. We just like to hear the stories, so keep on going.
They made camp near a cliff where water and grass was plenty for their horses. After camp had been set up and the evening meal ate, they sat around the fire talking about the day's events. Jake Sunagoose, one of the Indians, began to tell a story that perked up my grandfather's ears. Grandfather said that Jake told him that the Spanish were in this area looking for slaves at one time, and that Jake's own father had been a slave under the hands of the Spanish. One of the times the Spanish were hunting slaves, they came to the area north and east of present-day Blanding, where a group of Indians were camped. When the Indians saw the Spaniards, they beat it for cover. Jake's father and his older brother ran as fast as they could for a low cliff or overhang to hide. Once under the overhang, they looked for more concealment. Digging in the back of the overhang, the brother accidentally knocked some rocks loose out of what was a cave of sorts. Moving quickly, both boys opened up the entrance so they could get inside. Once inside, they covered the hole, leaving enough so that they could look out, but anyone looking at the spot could not tell that it was there. Once the Spaniards had rounded up all the slaves they needed, which was just about everyone in the village, they headed south. The two boys watched in horror as their family was whipped and beaten as they were herded to their new homes in Navajo land. It was when the two boys opened up the hole to get out that they noticed the cave was somehow strange and inviting. They made the entrance large enough to see that there was a set of rock steps going down inside. They went back to their camp and gathered enough material to make a fire and returned, made up some torches. Down inside, they made a fantastic discovery. There was a large room about 50 feet from the bottom of the rock stairs. And in this room was 58 Indians, all in their finery. They were not any kind of Indian either boy had ever seen, but they had the look of an Indian, and they were perfectly mummified. They were very tall and large men, and they had weapons of iron, swords, and bows of strange designs. They also had strange necklaces on with beautiful rocks attached. There were several large baskets with sorts of corn and peas in them, two large wooden boars, B-O-R-E-S, with very strange design on them. That could be a misspelling that was
Yeah, it might have been wooden
over.
boards, huh?
Yeah. Anyway. And they had two long poles. Oh, boxes. There's two large boxes, wooden boxes, with very strange designs on them. And they had two long poles on each side of the boxes.
Interesting.
Settle down.
Okay.
Suggesting that it took several men to lift the boxes. One of the boys opened one of the boxes and inside found gold and silver that looked like coins of some sort. The boys thought that they were in a tomb of a god and that they had better leave it the way they had found it. They went to the entrance and reburied it, and better than they had found it. They never returned. His grandfather asked Jake if he had ever been to that place. Jake said that he had, and that his father and his brother had taken an oath not to open it again. The brother died not long after Jake's grandfather, and as far as he knew, he never told anyone about the place. And then just a few more lines, but interesting story. I'd love to find this guy, but I can't find anything. Pat Rollstone.
Huh. So if anybody knows Pat Rollstone, how old would he be now?
That's a good question, because I don't know how old this letter was. There's no date on it. He did mention something in here. I'm trying to find it about where he might have been from. Maybe if I just read the whole thing.
Well, you had me going for just a minute because when you're talking about a box with the poles and that, the Indians, and I know you know this because you track this down way heavy. I just kind of bumped into things here and there. The Indians carried a box in with them. Uh, they called it their war box, and they'd carry it
Yep.
to the battle, and it sounded just like what they would do with the Ark of the Covenant, and that was a record, even put into the congressional records of the, I don't know what you call the Smithsonian, well, I don't know what you call them records. That was even recorded into them records that the Indians carried this war box with them around to their into battles.
You can read that all through the Aztec record. It's a very, very
Well,
interesting
it's
read.
it's it's mentioned into the records of the, what do they call that for the Smithsonian or the old, the archaeology way back in the day, the
You've got American Naturalist, you've got annual reports by year,
ethnology, the annual,
Smithsonian,
the
you've got ethnology,
that's what it is. I think it was in
Bureau of
the
Ethnology.
Bureau of Ethnology. That's what it was.
Yeah, yeah, I've got thousands of books here,
Cool.
so it makes it easy. But the Aztec record is very specific books, and anybody that's got an interest in them, you really need to read them. But anyway, let's move on to another one.
Okay.
Now, this one here is not wrote down, so I'm going to have to, well, I actually do have a written version of it. And you may have heard this before. I don't know. I don't think it ever got published, but I was actually surprised to find it typed out because I always knew it by memory. My friend had a friend stop by his house one day, and he brought his father-in-law with him. His father-in-law was from Levan, and his nickname was Bink. So anybody from Levan that knew people 10, 20, 30 years ago ought to know who Bink is. But Bink told a story where he was herding sheep up Pigeon Creek. And on his way up to get the sheep down off the mountain, he looked up above Levan, right there between Pigeon Creek and Chicken Creek, and he saw some of his sheep up there. So he went up to get them down off the mountain, and he hikes up there, and he come to a place that was kind of flattened out. And if you've ever seen that mountain, it's pretty steep. But he said there was a place up there where it kind of leveled out, and back to the back of it was a big white stone. And he said the stone just pulled at him. He had to move it. He just felt like there was something behind it. So he goes over and he digs around it with his hands and he does the best he can to try and work it loose and can't do it. So he heads back down to the farmhouse and goes down, gets some tools, pry bar, pick, who knows. Goes back up there, starts digging around it, and starts working this stone out. Finally, that stone moves, and sure enough, there's a cavern behind it. And he goes in there, and I got to see if I can see how many he said. He doesn't say, but what my memory remembers is there was about 24 Aztec warriors sitting in a circle, perfectly preserved, and they had their horses with them. He covered it back up, freaked him right out. He was afraid that the government would take away their grazing rights if he was to talk about it. So he never talked about it. And it wasn't until his older years that he finally told someone. My buddy that's passed away, he's had a couple people go up and look at it, or at least try to find it with to no avail. So I'd love to find that white stone because it's going to be the same people as in the story we just went over.
Yep, I agree with you. And to just to add, just because you said that they had horses in there, I long time ago, in the 90s, in the early 90s, when the internet was first getting going and email and all that, or maybe it'd been going and I was just first getting on and learning about email. I don't know. I had a guy contact me, told me that in your area, Dan, that you like to go on in Mount Trumbull. His brother was out hunting and found a cavern that they found a mummified horse inside this cavern. And I talked to him a few years later and says, man, I'd like to know more about this. And he says, nope, we've decided it's best to leave this alone and not and so that was the end of that. They I don't know if they got spooked or what, but they didn't want to talk any more about it.
Well, I understand that because, and I don't know what it is exactly, but there's a lot of things that we've come across over the years. And once you realize what's there and you put some thought into it, that's a conclusion that's awfully often drawn, is it would be best to leave it alone. And so I get what he's saying, but there's some things that even though we know at this point they should be left alone, we want to see them.
Yeah. Yeah.
We want pictures.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one I think you'll like, and you may be familiar with this one. I don't know. I think I wrote an article on each of these things at one point or another, but there's 11 years of articles in there, and I just can't remember everything I wrote about. But this one here, I'll go ahead and read it to you. This was a letter or a note, possibly an email, that was written to my buddy to explain what he had found. And apparently he had told him about it previously, but he put something in writing for him. And he said, I found the ball, referring to a gold ball. I found the ball in a basket filled with acorns. The basket was old, ready to disintegrate at the slightest touch. I gently took the ball from the basket, trying to be as careful as I could. All right, I took the ball from the basket, tried to be as careful as I could. The ball was heavy, almost too heavy for the spindly basket in which it had been resting in all these years. I was surprised at the detailed inscriptions on the ball, so tiny, so unique, yet very legible. Further study revealed that the inscriptions were a mix of Egyptian and Punic. Don't you dare run off a half-cocked with that.
Okay.
It states that there is a sphere where man cannot dwell because of his wickedness. It tells of a power greater than anything on the earth that will swallow man up if he lay hold to the ball for gain. He said, I laid the ball in the ground near the spot I had found it. It is in the Sandpeat Mountains, very near the balancing rock. It can be detected by the use of an instrument. And his name, and I cannot find him either, was Gary Lynn Greystone.
That's pretty interesting to me that you're saying that's in the Sandpeat Valley.
Well, I got more in the Sandpeat Valley, and I'm debating on whether to go over them today or not.
Come on, let's go over them.
Well, there'll be one at least. Do you recall the rock that Sean Davies was invited to look at that had some kind of a painting on it, and it had a man on it, had a bald head?
Yeah, what do you know about that?
I think it is somehow related to this gold ball story.
Because I know the person that has that, and they inherited it from their grandparents, and they really don't know a lot about it. But now I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, I don't remember what was said or how it came about, but this gold ball and that stone with the painting on it, the two came together in a story. And I always wondered if Sean knew that, but of course never had a chance to ask him.
Yeah, and for those that don't know Sean White Eagle, he's passed away 4 or 5 years ago, and I tried to get all of his information because he had a lot of information on his computer, on his hard drives, but he had it password protected, and we never could get it, and we did, never did get all that stuff, is gone with him. But I'll put a picture of that rock in this thing, and like I say, I've got some people contact me that want to know more about this rock. So
Yeah. Well, this one here I have vague information on, but I can get more.
so what do you know about that rock or anything? You don't know, you just know it's part of this story, possibly. It was found there in the Sanpete Valley area.
I'm pretty sure it came from the Sanpete area. In fact, it may have come from the very same place that this gold ball was found.
Okay.
I remember being told the gold ball was found or the rock with the painting on it was found in the same place as the gold ball. So who knows? I had a friend that came to me a while back, and he relayed to me a story which he was told, which was originally relayed to him from the finder. Once he showed interest in it, the guy clammed up and didn't want to talk about it anymore. You know how that goes.
Yep.
In a certain place, and I would love to go look for this one, so I'm going to be a little vague.
Fair enough.
I will say this guy was a stake president in Manti area back when this happened, and that's not the current stake president. In fact, I'm not even sure how many years ago. It could have been 20, could have been 30 years. But anyhow, him and his boy were up hiking in a certain area between a couple peaks, and they found what looked to be an old trail going up the mountain. And I know how hard it is to identify old trails. So it would have had to have been more like a gut feeling, or this just looks like a trail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've been on a few.
Yep.
So they followed it. Now, at one point, he said that they entered into a crevice, and at another point, I would swear he told me that they entered into a cave through a narrow crevice. But when they got inside or on the other side of this crevice, it opened up, and there were weapons laying all over the ground that were made of copper and brass. Now, you've seen the Michigan collection.
Yep.
Just look up the spearheads that you see in there.
Yep.
That obviously came from weapons. That's the kind of thing they were finding. But they also mentioned armor. He told me approximately where this guy said it was, and I don't think he understood how revealing his instructions were, because it's actually a very small area. And it couldn't be talking about the south side of the mountain, because not you, me, or even the best billy goat we know is going to go hike the south side of that mountain. It's definitely on the north side. Do you see what's happening, Terry? We're getting to the point where we can still get to a lot of this stuff, but we just don't have the time. We don't have the money. We're always fighting to put food on the table. I just don't have what I used to have. And that, I miss that. I used to be able to just take off whenever I wanted.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
as I recall, you and Sean pretty much just took off when you wanted
We
to.
did. Yep. And we're getting a lot older. It's a lot harder to get around to like we used to. So, but yeah, you're exactly right.
And it's hard to find someone who's going to treat it the way it should be treated.
Yep. Yep. I agree with that.
But you know exactly what's going to happen if anybody finds this stuff. The first thing that I'd want them to do, of course, is get pictures. Pictures, 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 video, and then cover it up and get out of it. Because if you don't, it's going to go the way of Smithsonian.
Yep, it'll be disappeared. Yep, you'll never hear a thing about it. And that's a sad thing, because when people do find things, just because of that, you never hear about it anyway. So much history is hidden by both sides of the fence. Both sides of the fence, because of the stupid laws we got and the stupid beliefs of what really happened in this country as a history. It's crazy.
Have you personally ever found something, or even convinced that you had found something, but you wanted to come back to it at a later date? And when you did, the whole place has changed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Someone got in it. It's
I have.
gone. There's no hole.
And people say, how can you lose something, you know? Well, man, it ain't all that tough, especially when if you're in an open area, maybe that's a different story. But when you're in the mountains with the trees and the terrains and the things, you know, and you stumbled onto it in the first place and you're not 100%, you know, you think you can get back to it, but a lot of times you can't.
Well, there's been a few places where I knew damn well where it was at. And you get back there and everything is different. And that's why I don't tell those stories.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, you know, back then is before the GPS, there was GPS, you know, and nowadays I guess it would be a lot easier with GPS, but I've had people say they know, man, that it used to be right here. Well, I take that back. You're
Well,
100% right. I remember finding where a cavern had just sunk in the ground. The ground had just sunk in, and it was overlooking. It was some mystery glyphs was overlooking it. So I knew right where it's at, and I figured there's got to be something here. And I wanted to go back, but I never made it back for a couple of years. And when I went back, I could not find it. And it it has to be right there, plain as day. And I mean, this ground sunk in probably a 6 foot circle and about 8 foot deep, you know, and I could not find that. And you can't tell me that that thing filled itself back in just a matter of 2 years. Ain't no way. And not be recognizable. Ain't no way. So yeah,
and
I know what you're talking about.
that's why you don't tell the story, because it's going to end with, but it was gone. And
Yeah.
then people look at you like, what?
Yep.
But I don't know, Terry. I don't know why things are changing to what they are now. I don't know. You notice that we're not getting the discoveries that we used to have.
That's true.
Things aren't happening like they used to. It's like the
Well,
story has got out, it's in somebody's hands, and that's where it sits for now.
Well, I think a lot of it is, you know, when we was growing up, everybody was up in the mountains hunting. You don't have a lot of hunters anymore. This day and age, you don't have a lot of explorers anymore. You know, they're sitting home playing video games, they're doing stuff like you don't have the explorers. And even in our generation, we did not get out and explore like the pioneers did, like they did, you know, because they didn't have nothing to do. They'd get their chores done and they couldn't sit and watch TV. So they was up in the hills playing, exploring, you know?
We got on our bicycles at, 14, 15 years old,
Man,
rode
8 years
six,
old.
7 miles up to the canyon, couple miles up the canyon, made half the campgrounds up that damn canyon, and would spend 5 days up there just doing whatever we wanted to
Yep.
do.
Yep.
And you know what? Mom, Dad didn't have to know where we were. They knew we were in the canyon.
Yeah. Yep. You're right. Yep. You're right.
That's why I won't go to that canyon to this day, because they want to charge me to go up in it.
Oh, yep. There were some interesting things in that canyon. But yep,
I
you're
think
right. They charge you to go up there now.
that's funny because I can say some things and you know exactly where I'm talking. Anyhow,
Well, with that said, Dan, you got any last words you want to say?
well, if you ever get bored and ask questions if you want. You ever get bored and ain't got nothing better to do, some of the best videos that you could do is you and me just sitting and talking about things.
That's true. That's true. And we've got a few of them out there and they're good videos.
Well, there's some articles on that website that I wish I hadn't have wrote, but I'm just going to leave them where they lie, that because nobody knows what to do with it.
Yeah.
I will say that I'm keeping busy. I'm hoping that things are going to get busier. Um, we just got a phone call that we waited for technically for about 23 years. And we've been told that it's time. and we're gearing up and trying to get there.
Well, cool. It sounds like, man, I better not ask you what that is right now. But man, I don't even know
What's
that you
that?
can. I just gonna say, I guess I'm not even gonna ask you about what that is right now, because I know there's some things that you and me both don't like to talk about.
Yeah, and besides that, you got a phone and you know how to use it.
Well, with that said, Dan, man, I appreciate you, and go check out his blog, Tescoro.com. And with that said, that's a wrap.
Buy book.
Hey, buy books. And with that said, you've Dan's got some books for sale, and I guess they can see them on Tescoro.com.
There's 11 books now. Well, technically, I can't remember whether it's 10 or 11. There's one book that not too many people get to know about. So, yeah, there's probably 11 books.
Check
And
that
they're on
out.
the Tescoro website. Says books for sale. Can't miss it.
And some of them books I know, and I don't know if they're on that website, that were old books that had got out of print. And if you wanted to buy them, man, they cost you an arm and a leg on Amazon
Well,
or something like that.
yeah,
Some of them
there's a
reprinted.
few books that I have photo reprint copied. I mean, they are exact replicas. And if you want to get real technical, I've got over 3,000 PDF books that I've used for research purposes. You know how it goes. You're looking for a particular topic. You're reading up on that topic. You go and you find out where they got their information from. Eventually, it leads you back to that original source. That original source is what I started collecting in 1999. Ballpark of 3,000 plus books now.
Cool. And these newer generations just don't understand. They can get a lot of stuff just at their fingertip on the internet. But back when me and you started out, there was no internet. There was no, you wanted to find a book, you went to the library, and if they didn't have it, if you didn't have the reference you was looking for, you had to do an interlibrary loan. They had to send off to California. They had to send
Yes.
to New York and have it shipped to your library, and then you could borrow it for a week, and then you had to take it back. We'd get them photocopied, but I don't know how many interlibrary loans I had to do to get back and track back to the original sources. So people don't know how lucky they've got it now.
You're preaching to the choir. Do you remember the 180 exploration documents? 180 Spanish explore. Well, there's a few other cultures in there too, but those today, if you could find them, you could probably download every one of them if they were in one place. You could probably download the 180 documents in a couple hours. It took me over a week to download those. Things have changed.
Things have changed. For some of it's for the better, some of it's not for the better. But yeah,
Well, interest is disappearing.
interest is disappearing. But when you were growing up, we had full access to the mountains. We had full access. I could ride my motorcycle. It didn't matter where. You can't hardly do nothing nowadays. You can't go anywhere without a permit. You can't do anything without getting. You can't. You can't.
Want to bet? I don't. I go where I need to go, and I don't care how I get to it.
And with that said, that's a wrap. Thanks,
See you,
Dan.
Terry.